Welcome to the Video Review Show. Today, we're embarking on quite an intriguing deep dive. We're looking at a video from 190 Vision. It's titled, Your Spirit Guides and Departed Loved Ones Are Ready to Help You. Our mission, really, is to unpack the unique insights shared by Laura and her husband, Coach, from this compelling material. We'll explore their perspective on who spirit guides are, how they connect with us, and also how our dearly departed loved ones might still communicate and support us. It's all through their own experiences and the examples they share. Get ready for some, well, pretty thought-provoking stories that might just invite you to consider connection beyond the physical realm in a new light.
This is 190 Vision Revisited, where reflection sparks transformation.
Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah, it's definitely a topic that resonates with so many people, but it often feels, shrouded in mystery or maybe uncertainty. What I liked is how Laura and Coach offer a really grounded approach. They weave in these personal anecdotes with clear explanations, all from their own lived experiences. It sort of makes the abstract feel remarkably tangible, doesn't it?
It really does. I agree. So, okay, right at the start, the video tackles that fundamental question. What exactly is a spirit guide? Coach gives a very specific definition that kind of sets the stage for everything else they talk about.
He does. He clarifies that from their perspective, a spirit guide isn't just any spirit, but specifically a human being, someone who lived an embodied life passed on. But then instead of immediately reincarnating, they consciously choose to remain in what he calls heaven, this spiritual realm. And they do this specifically to assist other souls still on their earthly journeys.
That's quite a specific purpose. It's a powerful idea. And Coach uses that great analogy referencing the movie Soul, which I think a lot of people will get. What parallels does he draw there?
Well, he points out how in Soul, after the main character passes, there's this period of training in the afterlife. And this training isn't necessarily about continuing what they did on Earth. It's more like preparing for a new purpose, which is either returning to a new body or, and this is the key part for guides, helping another soul navigate their path. It really frames it as a kind of dedicated, selfless service from beyond.
So the core takeaway from their discussion seems to be this. Spirit guides aren't just, vague, ethereal concepts. They're defined as these unseen mentors, distinct individuals who are dedicated to guiding and assisting us. It's about a purposeful spiritual service, not simply part of the rebirth cycle. And what's fascinating here is the implication that maybe we're never truly alone in our journey if we're open to this idea.
Precisely. I think beyond just the captivating stories, the deeper insight is almost a redefinition of mentorship itself. It suggests the profound practical support isn't just limited to the physical world we see. It kind of challenges us to consider this unseen network of guidance that could be constantly available, if only we learn how to perceive it,
Okay, but if these guides are here to help, how do we actually, connect with them? Coach himself admits it can be pretty tough to even identify who they are. He says he only knows a couple of his own, and the video suggests we can have multiple guides, right?
That's right. And Laura and Coach offer a really compelling reason why these guides, or ascended masters, or even our departed loved ones, don't always just show up clearly. They say it's simple. They don't want to cause fear. So if your heart starts racing, or if deep down you're not truly ready, even if you consciously ask, they might hold back. Laura actually shared her own experience with that, where she asked, but later admitted she wasn't genuinely prepared for a full-on revelation. It really highlights how important our own receptiveness is.
Right, so it's maybe less about needing a physical manifestation, like seeing something, and more about developing a deep internal knowing of their presence. Is that the idea? And the video offers some truly remarkable examples that hint at their subtle influence.
Indeed. The first story they share is quite vivid. It's about a woman who was, completely unfamiliar with the whole concept of spirit guides. And she found herself in a moment of profound despair, just feeling utterly desperate for some kind of sign.
Yeah, I remember this one. She was taking a bath, and there was a candelabra nearby with 6 candles. And in that moment of vulnerability, she just sort of whispered, if anybody's here, will you just give me a sign? And then what happened must have been, breathtaking. One candle just went out, poof. And the video makes a point of saying she was surprised, obviously, but crucially, she wasn't scared.
That's the pivotal detail, isn't it? Her lack of fear seemed to signal a readiness. So she continued, asking specific questions that had been really weighing on her mind, looking for clear guidance. And each time a candle extinguished, it served as a yes answer. Apparently, she followed this subtle yet clear guidance, and her situation improved. And even though she never found out her guides' names, the experience really solidified their presence for her. It reinforces that connection can happen in these very personal, unexpected ways without needing a full identity reveal.
That's such a powerful illustration of how the spiritual can interact with the mundane, the everyday. But then there's another story shared by Laura, which paints a slightly different picture. It highlights how we might actually miss a potential connection if we're not fully prepared to receive it. She mentioned encountering various men over the years who she felt might be her spirit guides.
Right. And Coach had apparently described a specific gentleman who had been around her a lot in her life.
Yeah.
Then later, they're at a bustling fish market. Probably the last place you'd expect a profound spiritual encounter. And Coach suddenly points out this elderly gentleman and tells Laura, you should go talk to him.
But Laura recounts that in that exact moment, she just froze up. The fear, or maybe just the sheer unexpectedness of it all, overwhelmed her. She couldn't bring herself to approach him. And afterward, she asked Coach, was that him? Was that my spirit guide? And his response was quite telling, wasn't it? He said something like, I guess we'll never know you didn't go talk to him. Which really emphasizes that idea of free will, even when there's a spiritual prompting happening.
It really does. That anecdote beautifully illustrates that spirit guides might manifest in whatever form they think is best. But sometimes the onus is on us. We have to overcome our own hesitations or fears to actually engage with that connection. It feels more like an invitation, not some kind of forceful intervention.
Okay, and then there's Laura's coffee shop story. That adds another fascinating dimension to these encounters. Coach had apparently had a vision of a thin, tall guy dressed all in white, giving Laura flowers when she was younger. But years later, Laura recalls meeting this man in a coffee shop who was actually quite different, dark-haired, about her height, wearing a leather jacket. Not the guy in white at all.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. The very next day, this man from the coffee shop sends her 3 roses. And Laura mentions she still keeps the card. That's quite something. They apparently talked for a couple of hours in this coffee shop, which she notes was almost entirely empty the whole time. Highly unusual for that place. It's a striking detail.
It is. And Coach highlights the profound significance of this kind of, materialization. He explains that when spirit guides appear in such a tangible way, it's typically because there was an immediate vital need in your life at that moment. Like something significant was unfolding, and they were there right then to offer crucial support. It suggests a very targeted kind of intervention.
It certainly does. It implies these connections aren't just random occurrences. They seem to be precisely timed to provide help when it's most needed. Almost like a sort of spiritual first aid, if you will. It definitely encourages us to look for those patterns and synchronicities in our everyday lives, maybe pay a bit more attention.
Now, for anyone intrigued by the idea of actively seeking connection, Coach shares his own experience with automatic writing, which sounds pretty unique.
Yeah, he describes experimenting with it. He'd hold a pen to paper and just allow his hand to move, setting the intention to ask his spirit guide to introduce themselves. What's fascinating is that the handwriting that emerged was distinctly different from his own normal handwriting. And maybe even more compelling, when he later researched the name that was revealed through the writing, he found the actual handwriting of that historical individual online. And he noted a remarkable similarity. That's quite a validation.
Wow, yeah, that's powerful. So for you, our listener, if you're curious to try this, the method they describe is basically this. Hold a pen or pencil to paper, ask your spirit guide a question, maybe just ask them to introduce themselves, and then just allow your hand to move without consciously trying to guide it, let it flow. They do suggest it might take a few tries, so persistence and probably an open mind are pretty key here.
It definitely sounds like an exercise in relinquishing control, doesn't it? And cultivating trust. Trusting that a connection can actually flow through you, even if it feels foreign or strange at first. It kind of invites us to consider our bodies as potential conduits for these subtle energies.
Okay, so moving on from spirit guides, the video then delves into a topic that's equally close to many people's hearts, our dearly departed loved ones. Why do Laura and Coach suggest they might return? Or maybe check-in is a better way to put it. And how do they communicate with us from beyond?
Well, primarily, according to Laura and Coach, they return to offer reassurance. That's the big one. To let us know that they're okay, that they're fine, they're in a good place, which helps alleviate the worry we so often carry about them after they pass. And secondly, just as importantly, they suggest they want to continue to offer guidance and support our progress, our journey here on Earth. It's a really comforting thought, suggesting that bond endures.
That truly is comforting. The video also touches briefly on the fundamental nature of passing on. It reminds us that when someone departs, it's only the physical body that ceases to exist. That as spiritual beings, the spirit itself doesn't actually die.
Right, and they connect this to the scientific principle, the law of conservation of energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. So our essential energy, our soul, simply transitions back to what they describe as the oneness of God. It's presented as more of a metamorphosis, not an ending, which offers a very different perspective on what death actually signifies.
Okay, so if they are still these energetic beings, how do they manage to bridge that gap and communicate with us? The video gives several really poignant and often surprisingly subtle examples of how this might happen.
Yeah, one of the most common ways they mention is through the sense of smell, which is fascinating. Laura recalls someone named Rhonda smelling her grandfather's old walking stick, which still carried his distinct tobacco scent. And Coach also shares a personal experience where his great-grandfather communicates through the smell of tobacco. This method seems particularly potent when it's tied to a scent that is personally and strongly associated with that specific loved one.
Oh, I can totally relate to that. Those sensory memories are incredibly powerful, aren't they? They also discuss communication through, physical objects and sounds. For instance, there was the story of Mr. Kim leaving a penny on the floor as a clear sign he was there, which Laura actually heard fall. And a classic example they give, maybe because it's easier for energy to manipulate, is the flickering of lights, affecting electricity in subtle ways.
Right. And then there's the more symbolic realm, things like animals or objects appearing. Laura's sister, for example, strongly believes that seeing a ladybug is a sign for their Grandma Joan. However, Coach raises a really interesting and practical point here. He suggests it's maybe less about a generic symbol like any ladybug, and more about things the loved ones specifically adored or that held deep personal meaning for them. For instance, he uses the example of Barbie dolls, if the grandmother truly loved them. Seeing one unexpectedly might be a far more personal and intentional sign. It kind of nudges us to consider the specificity of the sign, not just its mere existence. Does it really connect to that person?
That's a really helpful distinction, actually. It makes the potential connection feel even more personalized and, intentional. They also mention that messages can sometimes come through broader mediums, like maybe television or news reports. That sounds a bit more abstract.
It does, but think about it like seeing a news segment about someone with the same unusual name as your loved one, having a wonderful experience, and just feeling that as a message for you. Or even more subtly, maybe through phone calls. Someone calls you out of the blue saying they were just thinking about your departed loved one and felt they should reach out. The key, they suggest, is to pay attention to those fleeting coincidences and unexpected connections, and just be open to the possibility that there might be a deeper thread there.
And of course, one of the most widely experienced ways many people feel they connect is through dreams. Laura mentions frequently communicating with her loved ones in her dreams, describing conversations that feel incredibly real and often very informative, like she's actually getting guidance.
Dreams definitely seem to offer this unique, less guarded space for connection, don't they? It often feels like a more direct, maybe unfiltered line of communication, free from all the distractions of our waking world. It's certainly a reminder to pay attention to our dreamscapes.
Absolutely. Now, beyond these kinds of direct communication, the video shares some truly powerful examples of promises. Promises made before passing that were then somehow fulfilled after the loved one had departed. Laura's Grandma Joan, for instance, famously said before she died that she would be above her coffin at the funeral, laughing at everyone.
And incredibly, Laura recounts, and you can hear the emotion as she told it, that her husband, who was then her business partner, actually saw Grandma Joan above the coffin laughing, just as she'd promised she would be. I mean, that's a profound testament to their ongoing presence and maybe their ability to fulfill promises made in life.
It really is. And Coach shares an equally moving story about his uncle. Before his uncle passed away, he reassured Coach's son that he would definitely get into Vanderbilt University. And not only that, but he said that he, the uncle, would somehow take care of the tuition fees.
And sure enough, the story goes, the son not only gained admission to Vanderbilt, a tough school to get into, but the tuition costs ended up being remarkably, unexpectedly low. This incredibly specific outcome really suggests that, from their perspective, loved ones can indeed influence events and provide tangible support from the spiritual realm. It truly challenges our conventional understanding of what's possible beyond the physical.
Wow. So after hearing all this, what does it all mean for you, our listener? Laura and Coach seem to offer a pretty clear directive, essentially. Don't be afraid to reach out, to try and connect with your spirit guides and your departed loved ones.
That really is the core message running through it all. They encourage experimenting, maybe trying that candle method they described, light some candles, simply ask them to provide a sign, perhaps by blowing one out if they hear you, or maybe just be more observant. Does one candle flicker in a really unusual way compared to the others? But the crucial advice they give is, don't run or get scared if they do provide a sign. Just make sure you've clearly communicated what kind of sign you're looking for beforehand. It's framed as opening a dialogue, not opening some kind of scary door.
Right. And this whole deep dive, especially hearing those really intimate stories from Laura and Coach, it definitely raises an important question for all of us to perhaps ponder. What unexpected signs or messages have you experienced in your own life? Those moments that made you pause and wonder about connections beyond what we can immediately see or easily explain. It seems to be about cultivating an openness to these subtle nudges, these possibilities.
Absolutely. And if you're interested in exploring this further, maybe connecting with the 190 Vision community, you can find them on their Facebook group. Just search for 190 Vision. Also at their website, 190vision.com. And they're active on the 190 Vision YouTube channel, their Instagram account, and even the 190 Vision Amazon Fire channel. Lots of places to connect.
So remember, and knowledge is often most valuable when it's not just heard, but understood and maybe even applied in some way. What will you do with this insight? Will you simply ponder these ideas, or will you perhaps open yourself up just a little to a new way of experiencing connection? We certainly hope this deep dive into 190 Vision's video has given you plenty to think about. Until next time, keep exploring the unseen.